Hi, Diana. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Pet Biz Project. It's great to have you here, and I just know our listeners are going to absolutely love this episode and hearing from you. So, so welcome. Welcome to the
Thank
show.
you. Great to be here. Lovely to be here.
Thanks. And I want to start off, I suppose, for those that aren't familiar with Frontier Pets. I would love for you to take us right back to the beginning about around what inspired you to create this brand, and what was the journey that actually got you to that point of actually launching Frontier Pets. Can you tell us about that?
Quite deeply personal for me. I consider myself to be a conscious consumer. So I will read labels. I'm that annoying person in the supermarket that holds up everybody by reading all of the labels. I want to know what's in my food. I really want to know about provenance, so where it's come from. Doesn't mean it
Mm,
has to be all Australian, but I really like to know where it comes from and Australian if it can be. But importantly for me, I am an absolute advocate for free range farming. I cannot stand the thought of our farm animals being in this
mm,
intensively farmed system. And so I choose free range produce where I can, organic, but definitely free range. And I'll do it to the point of, if I'm going to buy eggs, for example, and there are no free range eggs available, there's only cage eggs available, I
mm.
just won't eat the egg.
Yeah.
So I've got that line in the sand there. And one day, it was about 11 years ago now, because I'm coming up for my 10th year anniversary.
Wow. Yeah.
I know. You kind of
Time
blink.
flies. Yeah.
So 2014, because I met with my animal nutritionist recently. She said, it's been 10 years.
Wow.
Anyway, so I'm looking at my the food that I'm feeding my dogs, and for the
Mm,
first time, I can't remember what the catalyst was, but my dogs were sitting there waiting to be fed, and I had a dry kibble, and I started to pour the kibble into the bowl. And for the first time, I actually looked at the back of the packet.
yeah.
What are the ingredients and so on. And
Mm,
I realized I had absolutely no idea
yeah.
where the ingredients were coming from, what half of them meant. I didn't know what
Mm,
meat meal meant.
yeah.
I assumed that it was meat, and I assumed that it was meat because our pets need to eat meat. But I didn't. I didn't really understand it, and if it was that obscure
Yeah.
in my choices that I make for myself, I wouldn't purchase the product. And so it occurred to me that I was making all of these conscious choices for myself, but I wasn't translating that to my pets.
Yeah.
And then I had this kind of moment of clarity that said, well, hang on a minute, our pets have got to be the second largest consumers of protein on
Yeah.
the planet beside us.
Mm,
So here I'm making all these conscious choices for myself, and these consumers of protein
yeah.
that can't make their own decisions are quite probably eating intensively farmed animals.
Mm,
And so it was a kind of was a light, it was literally that light bulb moment that
yeah.
people talk about. So I did some research, and usual Google research, and said, find. I just wanted to find a food that contained ethically sourced ingredients, that came from free range farms,
Mm,
that supported Australian farmers practicing sustainable agriculture, and that it was made in a way that was appropriate for that pet. And at the moment,
yeah.
it was the dogs. And I couldn't find anything. I just literally couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
And what I did do is find a lady called Dr. Kathy Cornack,
Mm,
and she was based in Brisbane at the time.
yeah.
I'm from Queensland, so it was a very easy conversation. So I rang her and I said, "What should I be feeding my pets?" She was a vet and an animal nutritionist,
Yeah.
and she said you should be feeding raw food. So that was her opinion. It's not
Mm,
necessarily the same as everybody else, but that was her opinion.
yeah.
You really should be feeding raw. And I said, "Can I find a pre-prepared raw food that contains free range produce?" And she said, "No."
Yeah.
Not in Australia. You're never going to be able to find that in Australia.
Yeah.
And she said, if you want to do what you want to do, you've got to make it yourself. So she gave me a recipe, and she said you can just go and shop for your proteins and your eggs, and so the recipe that she gave me contained eggs and fruit and vegetables and so on. She said, just this is the basic recipe, and then you
Mm.
can make a decision about where that produce comes from.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I went and found my livers and my kidneys and
I've been
all
on that
those
journey. Yeah.
wonderful things,
Yeah.
and two fairly large dogs. And it would take me all of my weekend
Yeah.
and to portion control these meals,
Yeah.
all of my freezer space, and it was a disgusting process to
Yeah.
go. I eat meat, but it was a disgusting process to go through.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, there's just got to be a better way to
Mm.
do this. And at the time, I went on a trip to New Zealand, and I discovered a product called Canine Natural,
Yeah.
which is a dog food that's freeze dried. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh, that's a really easy way of doing things. And I came back to Australia, and Canine Natural was available, so I started purchasing that. But the problem, Tarryn, is that it still wasn't free range.
Yes. Yeah.
So it met with the nutritional requirements, and it was a raw feeding that I didn't have to do myself, but it still
Mm.
didn't have that free range element.
Yeah.
And so, because I am just the person that I am, I mean, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to
Yeah.
make it easy. And, my background's in marketing.
Yeah.
And
So you've
so,
got that experience, haven't
yeah.
you? Developing
Well,
brands. Yeah.
yeah, and you've got to, who is the consumer? What do they want?
Mm.
And my research was saying that other people were having the same problem.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just me. It was like other people were saying, I really want to do the right thing
Mm.
by farm animals and the planet. What do I do? I've got to prepare all this stuff. It's all too hard.
Yeah.
So really, that's how it started. That's how the
Mm.
journey started, and. Uh, I'm assuming that we'll go through this as
Yeah.
we're talking, but at the time I was quite naive.
Yeah.
I'm a person that does, I really get in boots and all, and I get in there and I really do it. And I remember saying to my husband at the time, look, I've got this great idea. Probably, I think it cost me $50,000 and take 3 months to pull off, and of course it's millions of dollars
Oh,
later.
yeah. Just
It was nothing like it.
drop in the
Um,
ocean, isn't it?
yes. Once I was on that mission,
Yeah.
I kept going, and I I actually went and visited free range farms because of my marketing and business development background.
Mm.
I thought it's all right to have this idea in theory, but
Yeah.
can you actually pull it off? Is it even viable? Is it even a
Yeah.
viable business idea? And so I dragged my husband and we went on this road trip
Oh, fantastic.
from all around the east coast.
Yeah.
And I took the original recipe that Dr. Kathy had given me, which contained the eggs and the fruit and vegetables and the proteins and the offals.
Gosh.
And I decided to use only proteins and offals from animals that are traditionally intensively farmed.
Yeah.
So your pigs, your chickens, your beef,
Yes.
fish, very intensively farmed.
Yeah.
And I went, I won't get it. Oh, just don't get me started on the
So,
fish.
so the point from you actually having this idea to actually launching Frontier Pets, that was quite a long period then, wasn't it?
It
With all that
was.
research and travel?
It was. So we went and visited the free range farms, asked them if
Yeah.
they would sell us their trim, all of those things, and other stories that they were just delighted to be able to
Yeah.
do that for us. But yes, it took 3 years. So I was
Gosh.
working at the time, and
Yeah.
and so I didn't just say, okay, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and now do Frontier Pets.
Yeah.
I actually had to work out whether I could make an income out of this. I mean, we've
Yeah.
all got to make an income.
Mm.
So it was 2014, as I said, when I met Dr. Kathy,
Yeah.
and we started working on this together. She came on board and we worked on it together. And I
Yeah.
launched in January of 2017.
Great.
So it was a 3-year transition.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just making this food and how do we freeze dry it and finding people that
Mm.
could do it for me because I obviously didn't have a freeze dryer sitting in my
Yeah. And they're
garage.
not cheap, are they?
But they're $1 million.
Yeah.
Mm.
Wow.
And they're big, size of a
Yes.
container, but
Gosh.
very, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
very clever.
Yeah.
So, I had to do a lot of work to find out, if it was
Mm.
even viable to do this,
Yeah.
and then put my marketing hat on and say, okay, well then if I do this, how am I going to market it?
Mm.
I didn't want to get into a retail system. I wanted a direct to consumer
Yeah.
model. So there was a lot of work that went into just the development because it might seem like a standard thing now, freeze dried food, but at the time in Australia
Yeah.
10 years ago, there wasn't
It was a
anything.
very different marketplace, wasn't it, for
Zero.
pet food?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Wow.
kind of the
Yeah.
very short
And
version of how I got there.
yeah, and so when you say, like, with Frontier Pets, you stand very strongly for ending factory farming. That's the
Yeah.
mission and the vision over above the food itself.
Mhm.
Was that a decision that you made right from the get-go when you were going and visiting those farmers and developing the product? Was that at that time, was that the point where you were like, right, this is what we stand for, this is what we're going to, change, this is the mission that we're on? Or was that something that developed after you sort of launched?
No, it was right from the get-go.
Yeah,
So there I am, as I said, saying I'm only going to buy free range and I'm only
mm,
going to support farmers practicing
yeah,
sustainable agriculture. And as I said, that light bulb moment where I said
mm,
our animals are
yeah,
the second largest consumers of intensively farmed animals. So they're actually part of the problem.
yeah,
What if I could make them part of the solution?
yeah,
And so I went with that intention. So it sounds like an extremely bizarre mission to say I want to end factory farming.
yeah,
But we're ending factory farming through the pets.
yes, yeah,
So absolutely, I went in with that intention.
mm.
Obviously, the second part of that is you got to make a food that's extremely nutritionally sound.
Well,
And
and
that
yeah, and
next is, yeah.
easy for parents to prepare, isn't it? Pet parents to
Oh,
prepare because
totally.
we're all
Oh,
so
yes.
time poor these days,
Yes.
isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
So it was, that's right, because
yeah,
you want to do all the right things, both by
mm,
the environment, by farm animals, animal welfare, and your pet.
yeah,
But let's face it, we're all busy. You're not going to sit there, as I said, chopping up food. I had to
yeah,
had to have those ticks in all those boxes.
yeah,
Does it meet the nutritional requirements of our pet?
yeah,
Is it easy to serve and prepare? Can you
yeah,
put it in your cupboard? All of those things had to be considered. But
yeah,
so I did go in with that, and I'm still there, and I'm saying everything that we do at Frontier Pets has that vision and that mission behind it.
yeah. And
So
you have
every
such
decision that,
strong values as well, core values of the
oh,
business, don't you?
absolutely. It's
There's
like,
like that you
does
don't
it meet
compromise
that?
on. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, is it that first, like, I mean, the end result is that free range and organic produce is
mm,
a lot higher in vitamins and minerals
yeah,
than the intensively farmed alternative. So
yeah,
what you're getting is a food that is nutritionally off the charts good anyway.
yeah. And people must see that straight away in their pets once they start moving on to that kind of a diet. They must see results pretty
Absolutely.
quickly, don't
Within a
they?
week, within
Yeah,
a week, you will notice a difference. If you've gone
yeah,
from a heavily processed kibble diet,
mm,
if you went from a heavily processed kibble diet to a raw, you'd see the difference.
yeah,
So we're a raw product,
yeah.
made easy, and
Yes.
that has that ethics behind it. But yeah, you'll see it in a week. You will. Yeah.
And so a huge part of what you do, I suppose, with your brand and with the business must be education, is it? And awareness.
Yes, on several levels.
Yeah. So how do
And
you approach that? Can you explain
yeah,
that to us?
yeah, I think, well, like I said, being a marketer,
Yeah.
I
You
guess
know your
that's,
stuff.
yeah. So you know what it is that you have to do.
Mm.
But it's a collision of two things, I think, and this is where I've never experienced this in my marketing life before, where a consumer is so engaged with the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
And, when you sell a pair of shoes, you might like the pair of shoes, but the consumer doesn't really need to know where the shoes are made or how they're made or whatever. But when
Yeah.
you're talking about someone's animal, their pet,
Mm.
it's a completely different ball game.
Yeah.
And everybody that's probably listening to this knows that.
Yeah.
We're in this business and we've got, I dare say, an entitled
Mm.
customer base uh, that
Well,
want to.
it's very emotional purchasing decision, isn't it? Similar,
Oh,
like
absolutely.
parents
Yeah,
purchasing for their children, you have to trust that brand to be, to buy from them.
yes,
Yeah. It,
yes. And I think that that's a really good analogy and a reference. It's
yeah.
like a baby.
Mm.
When people have babies, they're very, very engaged in what they feed their children,
They do a lot of
and this is
research and yeah, make sure they know the
absolutely,
facts. Yeah.
absolutely. So yes, there was education, but it was an
Mm.
education from Frontier Pet's point of view, but also the consumer was becoming more educated.
Yeah.
So when we started, I have to say we were almost at the right product at the right time
Mm.
because consumers were already questioning the
Yeah.
the food that they were feeding their pets. They are getting closer to their pets. And obviously, COVID made a difference there as well.
Yeah,
The
we
pet
became a
ownership went
lot
up
more
there.
closer and attached, didn't we, being at home
Exactly.
together all the time? Yeah. And I
Exactly.
suppose when you were
Yeah.
developing Frontier Pets, was that around the time where, there was a big wave of lots of documentaries out there educating us about factory farming in terms of what we were consuming as people? So you would have seen a lot of pet parents, I suppose, starting to become more educated about what they were eating themselves, and then that would translate through to Frontier Pets and what they're feeding their pets. Yeah, was that the case?
So, yes
Hmm.
and no. The biggest challenge I think that we have is to motivate the customer that is a conscious consumer to make that giant mental leap into
Yeah,
their pets. And when I speak to people, they say, I never thought about that.
yeah,
It never occurred to me that my pets are
yeah,
eating intensively farmed animals. It
yeah.
did, in a sense, forget the nutritional value and the processing and the raw
Mm.
versus kibble and all that argument. That's its argument in its own right.
Yeah.
It's for us, it's that converting people saying if you only buy ever free range eggs, if you only ever
Mm.
buy free range produce, do the same thing for your pets.
Yeah.
And I still have those conversations.
Mm.
So I think people are starting I mean, obviously, I don't think they're starting to make their choices. They are starting to make their choices. I mean, look at the range of
Yeah.
free range eggs that are on the supermarket shelves today
I
versus what they
know
were
it's
like.
very different, isn't it, to
It's
even a few years
it's
ago?
very different.
Yeah.
And that's consumer
Mm.
driven. I mean, the
Yeah.
Coles and Woolworths aren't going to allocate shelf space to something that doesn't
No.
exist. So so it's both of those things, Taryn. I think
Mm.
it's saying to people that are already making those decisions,
Yeah.
think about that for your pet as well.
Yeah.
And then for us, it was around really, it's more biologically appropriate to feed your pets raw
Mm.
food. We know it's hard. We
Yeah.
know it's a pain. Here's a product that makes that easy. And
Yeah.
nutritionally, off the charts good.
Yeah.
So there's two kinds of motivators for us. There's the pet parent that wants the health
Mm.
for their pet,
Yeah.
and there's also the pet parents that are saying, "Oh, hey, this is it's very important for us to feed a food that supports Australian agriculture and
Yeah.
environmental sustainability and those things." So,
Yeah.
so yeah, there was a lot of education around that. And how do you do that? I get in front of a
Mm.
camera and tell people.
which
And
I
I think that,
absolutely love. I
yeah,
love watching your videos. I just think
oh, thanks.
you're so engaging on camera, and they're just, you feel the emotion when you're watching them, like watching your mission and vision video, and that you can just get
Yes,
hooked into that emotion of being part of a movement, which is
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, pet food with purpose, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I do feel strongly about it, and I think that from again from a consumer point of view, they're looking for that authenticity, and
Mm,
a lot of the big companies, just by virtue of the fact that they're large, you
yeah,
never see any of that. You never see the working minds of the people behind the company,
yeah.
whereas we're small enough and agile enough to be able to do that.
That's fantastic. And I suppose a big part of your customer base must be also like vegans and vegetarians, because, I hear it all the time, like when people are trying to do that high quality food for their pets, and they may be looking to raw feed, but, and it's not just vegans and vegetarians, most of us don't like handling all that meat and preparing it ourselves and things. So, that convenience is something that a lot of consumers are looking for these days. But what I love about your marketing is it's such good marketing, but it doesn't feel like, it's that greenwashing that you see from a lot of brands out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
tell the authenticity and the transparency through it. Yeah.
It's something that, again, putting my marketing hat on.
Hmm.
I worked in advertising agencies, and there were some, there's
Yeah.
sayings that are bantered around, but one of the ones that stuck in my head forever and ever and ever is that the consumer isn't stupid, she's your
Yes.
wife.
Yeah.
And I say that to people all the time. Don't
Yeah.
assume that the consumer's stupid. They're
Yes.
you. You're a
Yeah.
consumer. You're not stupid.
Yeah.
And that they will. You can't just say nonsense stuff.
Hmm.
There's a lot of white noise about pet
Yeah.
food. There's a lot of
Yeah.
differing opinions, but it's what makes sense. And I think people
Hmm.
relate to other people. They just say, look, this
Yeah. It's
makes
that
sense.
human
Your dog's not.
connection. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your dog's not walking around with a barbecue cooking their food. Your
Yeah.
cat can't live on a vegan diet. It will
Hmm.
die.
Yeah.
It's an
Exactly.
omnivore.
Yeah.
It will just die.
Yeah.
Carnivore, sorry, it will just
Yeah.
die. So, I think that, the consumer is far more informed. And as I said, in this particular instance with our pets, they're
Hmm.
so heavily engaged
Yeah.
in that decision, and they are trying to relate to
Yeah.
somebody that, seems to, it's just a person like them that wants to feed the right food.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't have all of the answers, but so therefore I engage other people like Dr. Kathy Cornack, who
Yeah.
who has the answers. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
been able to put the recipe together,
Yeah.
but she can. But yeah,
Well, it's
don't
it's
assume it's stupid.
important in any business to surround yourself with the right people, isn't it? You can't be
Absolutely.
everything to everybody, and you can't know everything. But yeah, it's
Yes.
around, surrounding yourself with people that can give you advice and support on that journey. So, you from what I've read about Frontier Pets, you didn't start out dogs and cats, did you? Did you start out with dog food first, and then you transitioned to sort of bring in and develop the cat side of things as well at a later date? Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think it was because I had dogs. I've had
Yeah.
cats in the
Yeah.
past, so I love cats too.
Yeah.
But I just happened to have dogs,
Yeah.
and it was such a I understood, I think, the dog market a lot better.
Mm.
And when I sat down with Kathy, who's a vet as well, and she said there are so many problems with our dogs,
Yeah.
the weepy eyes, the digestive issues, the
The
skin
skin
conditions,
issues.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
there's so many issues with them that can
Mm.
be traced back to their food.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a no-brainer in that respect.
Mm.
And um, what cats have their own issues too, but they're not as obvious, I think,
Yeah.
as the dog. So it was a clear path for me to go down the dog area,
Yeah.
and as I said, within a week you'll see a difference in your dog.
Yes.
But then when we got into the dogs and I'd learnt more about um, the physiology of our
Mm.
companion animals, and that was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
I talk about engagement. I
Mm.
was like with Dr. Kathy all the time, and she trained our staff all the time.
Oh,
She's
fantastic.
constantly up training,
Yeah.
and she talks about, their jaw structure and how their
Mm.
digestive system, and so we
Yeah.
really actually get in there and
Yeah.
we understand. And because I could see the change so easily with the dogs, it was more of a, the path of least resistance, I suppose.
Yeah.
But we started marketing cat food about 18 months ago, so we're starting to get into the cat space.
Fantastic.
So yeah, it's just so we've
Natural
got dog
yeah.
foods and
Mhm.
treats, and now we've got cat food and treats. Yeah,
It's just part of the journey, isn't it? I think for a lot of
yeah,
brands, you
totally.
have to start with something. You can't do it all initially, especially budget wise and
Ex-
just time and energy. It's got to be part of the journey that you're constantly evolving and growing in different areas. So it's great to see
Yeah,
that, that solution is out there for cat parents as well. I think it's, and people having both, so many households, especially since
yes,
COVID, now have multiple pets and not just
that's
dogs
right.
or cats, but have both. So it's a great feeding solution for the whole home. So it's great. So,
Well,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
it kind of it evolved as much as I wanted to get into cats anyway.
Hmm.
There were so many people that were contacting us and saying, my cat, it keeps eating my dog's food. They're eating Frontier Pets food.
Yeah.
So it was fine. I mean, it wasn't, as I said, our cats are
Yeah.
carnivores. Let's get real.
Yeah.
But they were eating the dog's food, so they were saying, "Can you please come up
Yeah.
with something for cats?"
No, that's good. It's a good point to listen to your customer feedback as well. As you're developing your business and moving along that journey, you've got to constantly be asking for that feedback and taking it on board, because I think
Yep,
sometimes we think we know what consumers want, and then it's when you actually listen to the feedback, it's a very different story. So
absolutely.
fantastic. So I suppose a lot of our listeners, some of them are just starting out on the journey of developing their own pet brands. Do
Yep.
you have any sort of specific advice, or I suppose just lessons you've learned along the way that you would, think are very valuable for those just starting out?
Yes, I think, firstly, well done. It's a
Tough.
challenging industry, as I said. Yeah, not because it's our pets, but because the consumer is so, as I said, so heavily engaged.
Yeah.
You can't be separate from your consumer, and I think that's that. If I had a lesson or advice, it would be
Mm.
to understand the consumer.
Yeah.
And when we started, I have a direct to consumer brand, so I don't go through retail stores. And I did that specifically because I wanted to understand who my consumer was.
Yeah.
And I can say over the last 10 years, the consumers even changed. They're more educated and more educated, and as more products
Yeah.
come on the market, they're looking at all of those things. So
Mm.
yes, you have to understand who it is that you're speaking to.
Yeah.
And but for me, it was about sticking to my guns as
Yeah.
well, because there are so many messages out there for the pet parent. Um, that as I said, they're very engaged. They feel very entitled. I've had
Yes.
so many, I mean, thousands of customers trying to tell me what to do, and
Yeah. Oh, I hear
and
that a
whilst
lot.
I go, bless you,
Yeah.
I do have, I have engaged people that
Yeah.
understand animal nutrition,
Yeah.
but because there's so much information out there for the
Mm.
pet parent, they're saying, yeah, but I've read that this and that.
Yes.
Um, so understand who they are and what they want.
Mm.
Understand though what your product is, and if you feel attached to what you're doing, then stick to that.
Yeah.
Don't change all over the place,
Yeah.
because the consumer will.
Yeah.
And we know that if you get 100 people, two of them will be outspoken.
Yeah.
and they don't necessarily represent the other 98.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
They're
so
usually
you've
the
got them
opinionated.
telling
Yeah.
you've got them telling you what to do all the time. And
Yeah.
if you weren't like stuck to what your gun, stick to your guns,
Yeah.
then you could be quite easily swayed by all this information.
Yeah.
And there's stick to what you believe in, and it will
Mm.
also get you up in the morning.
Yeah.
We all know running a business, whether it's in food manufacturing
Mm.
or anything else, it's hard yakka.
Yeah.
Forget your weekends, forget your public holidays.
Unites.
It's
Yeah.
just never going to happen.
Yeah.
So you've got to have something that makes you get up in the morning and keep
Mm.
doing that. And the only thing that you've got is something that you believe in, that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And, so stick with that, because that will augur well for you moving forward,
Yeah.
because it's a very competitive industry.
Oh,
It's highly
hugely. It's
competitive.
like every day there's new brands starting up left,
Oh,
right, and
totally.
center. It's just, yeah, it is a
Yeah.
booming industry, but it's also a very competitive one, as you
Oh,
said.
yes.
And there's I think also with digital marketing these days, there's so much noise out there, whether it's your email inbox or your social media feed. There is so many conflicting views and brands popping up that it's
Yeah.
just sometimes overwhelming for consumers as well. With being direct to consumer, like making that decision to not be in retail stores, how do you use that being direct to consumer, like in a technical or a strategic way? Do you actually like send out regular surveys, or do you just ask them on social media for feedback? How do you go about getting that feedback back from the customer?
In my instance, and I think in a lot of in this industry, as I said, the consumer's very engaged.
Yeah.
So you don't actually have to ask them. They're going to volunteer the
Yeah.
information. Just,
They're outspoken enough, aren't they?
uh, yeah, so it's one of those industries. As I said, it was such an eye opener for me. As I said,
Yeah.
having been in marketing for so long, and I've worked for some of the major advertising agencies
I
in the
know, it's
country, and I'm not a young
amazing.
person,
Yeah.
so I've worked across so many brands,
Mm.
retail and otherwise, and I've never met a consumer group that is
Yeah.
entitled to tell you what it is
Yeah.
that you should be doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I've ever had a problem getting feedback and engagement.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do actually ask. We do surveys all the time,
Yeah.
but it is actually to involve people, to
Mm.
say, what is it you would like to see us do next?
Yeah.
And then that gives them, a sense that they're part of our brand. And
Yeah.
I'd really like to highlight that with us. And I've given a lot of talks about Frontier Pets as a brand, and Di Scott is kind of attached to that brand.
Mm.
And I said, it's not Di Scott and it's not Frontier Pets. It's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of people that feel the same way.
Yeah.
And people can say this. It's a real throwaway line. Oh, I care about the
Yeah.
customers and all that kind of. Everyone cares about their customers, because otherwise they wouldn't have a business.
Business. Yeah.
Yeah, but we are a
Yeah.
movement of people.
Yeah.
There's no question. It's not Frontier Pets, the brand, or me. It's a movement of people that want to
Mm.
achieve something. And so I
Yeah.
think we're very blessed in that people feel that they're part of this journey. And we've
Mm.
had customers that have been with us since the get-go, and I could name
Yeah.
them. I could
Yeah.
actually name them, even though we've got 50,000 customers now.
Yeah.
I could name the people that were there right at the beginning,
Mm.
following the journey. And
Fantastic.
they will, right at the beginning, I was the customer service person, and I
Yeah.
was and a lot of these people still have my direct email, and they'll contact me and say, Di,
Yeah. What have you done?
so yeah, yeah, and sometimes you go, oh,
Yeah.
but most of the time you go, you know what, that's really interesting information,
Yeah.
and the way that you speak to people, you might whilst you're speaking to pet owners as a general level,
Mm.
cavoodle people might
Yeah.
have a different language to a Doberman person,
Yes.
and they
Yeah.
and they do.
Yeah.
So you get that, you say, my cavoodle is X, and or
Yeah.
my Doberman or my working dog, they've got different triggers and
Yeah.
different ways of talking to them. They've got usually the same nutritional needs, but
Yeah. But
yeah,
I suppose I don't know if the right term is like breeders, like we are becoming very attached to specific breeds of dog
yes,
because we're so attached to them as, part of the family and their personality and what they bring to our lives. So,
yeah,
yeah, it's funny, isn't it, seeing how we're evolving towards that sort of more attached relationship with our animals, which I think is fantastic. So, Di, one thing I wanted to ask you about is, obviously the cost of living is a challenge for business owners. Like all of us are experiencing greater operational costs and overheads, and hiring team members is becoming, harder and harder. But it's
yep.
also creating challenges for consumers as well as they're watching their purse string and watching, how much they're spending. Is there anything that, like with you running Frontier Pets, is there anything that you've sort of developed or done to sort of help in that regard, whether it be with your business or with consumers?
Absolutely. I'm glad that you've separated those two. So
Yeah.
from a business point of view, you've obviously got your operations.
Mm.
And when you're little, you're very agile, and
Yeah.
you can see so clearly where the bottlenecks are and the expenses are and so on. As you grow, that becomes a little
Mm.
bit harder, but we're still a relatively small business. So as we've moved, so from our point of view, we were in a small place in northern New South Wales. We were
Yeah.
falling over each other. We know we had not the most streamlined of operations. We've moved to Brisbane,
Mm.
and that's streamlined our operations.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fairly standard practice. You look at your operations and you try to streamline those as much as possible.
Yeah.
I personally, Frontier Pets does not compromise on our product.
Yeah.
So if you've got, if you're not as attached to where the produce comes from, you can get cheaper produce as
Yeah.
you go forward. We don't. We
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
because is it free range? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And is it free range for whole of life? Forget this
Yes.
grass fed
Yeah.
nonsense.
Yeah.
Is it free range for whole of life? So
Yeah.
we have very, very, very little movement in terms of saving money from
Mm.
our produce point of view. So
Yeah.
the only thing that we can do from a business is to save money operationally.
Yeah.
Uh, and that just comes with time, I'm
Mm.
afraid. I can't, there's no magic
Yeah.
turnkey solution for that. I
Yeah.
think it just comes with time. A lot of businesses buy other businesses or merge with other businesses. It happens a lot
Mm.
in the pet food industry because then they can consolidate their administration.
Yeah.
So I think that's the same with any business. I don't know that
Yeah.
I could add anything from that point of view. But from a consumer point of view, and this will sound like the weirdest thing in the
Mm.
world, but Frontier Pets is not the cheapest product on the
Yeah.
planet.
Yeah.
And having said that, sorry, and I will get to the point in a second. Having said that, consumers are, or the majority of consumers are used to paying X amount of money to feed their pets. It might be 50 cents a bowl.
Mm.
We're not 50 cents a bowl, we're $3 a bowl.
Yeah.
And so the consumer is saying, well, why would I pay $3 a bowl? So there's an
Mm.
education component on that and saying, do you feed yourself $3 a bowl? So
Yeah.
so get out of that cheap mentality and go to
Exactly.
here.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that when people have, especially when they have large dogs,
Mm.
they're not going to spend $20 a day feeding their pet.
Yeah.
They're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so I've got two large dogs.
Mm.
And even me, twice a week, I don't feed Frontier Pets.
Yeah.
I feed a raw diet. So I will be cooking myself spaghetti bolognese. I'll take the
Mm.
raw mince, I'll chop up
Yeah.
some carrots, and I'll feed them that.
Yeah.
So there are ways that people uh, can save money, I suppose.
Mm. Sort of like
Or
hybrid feeding or something in terms of, mix and matching a little
yeah,
bit. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, and it absolutely astounds people when I say to them, don't feed frontier pets all the time.
Mm.
I'm not saying go and feed them some other brand. I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Don't go feeding them crap still, but you know.
God forbid. But that's actually not true. There are some really good brands out there. Uh,
Yeah.
but I say raw feeding's best. It doesn't
Mm.
take much for you to grab a handful of mince
Yeah.
and chop up some fruit and vegetables and put it in a bowl. And so
Mm.
twice a week I do that. It also it adds variety
Yeah.
for pets. Even though my dogs still absolutely love fronty pets and they genuinely do, they'll lick the
Mm.
bowl clean every time.
Yeah.
They will still jump through hoops if I've got a bunch of mince in my hand. I'll go, bring it
Oh, of
on.
course. I know
So,
what you mean. I've got a Labrador. I nearly get taken out when there's raw meat
oh,
around.
absolutely, absolutely. Stand aside and
Yeah.
let this. So there are ways that the consumer can manage
Yeah.
that process. I mean, but at the end of the day, they're wanting something that's convenient and that is nutritionally
Quality.
complete.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
still Frozen Pets is nutritionally complete.
Yeah.
But by all means, do other things occasionally
Yeah.
that will help to stretch your dollar that little bit further in
Yeah.
exactly the same way as you do for your own home budget. Just
Mm.
think about it.
Yeah.
Think
No,
about
that's
what
good
you're doing.
advice. I mean, we actually
Mm.
find, when we survey consumers, being a marketing agency, we survey consumers to find out what pet parents are looking for. And we actually find time and time again, even right up to this day, the number one priority is quality that they're looking for over and above the price of what something costs. So,
Yeah.
and we're also seeing a lot that, people are cutting back in other areas of their life, but not so much with their pets. They're maintaining that quality purchasing, spending what it costs to get that quality.
Yeah.
But then they're cutting back in other areas of their lives, instead. So it's very interesting to see because I don't think that would have been quite the same to that degree um, prior to COVID or even like 10 years ago. I think, consumers are placing a lot higher priority on the health and well-being of their pets than they ever have. So
Well,
even in
that's right. I
difficult
mean,
times.
if you,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, other people have used this comparison before, but a cup of coffee
Mm.
now is nearly
I
$6.
know it's ridiculous.
And it's like, well, don't have that cup of coffee,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the $6 will give you a really great food. So
Yeah.
I think people are trying to, making those choices too, and
Mm.
not just because of the cost of living, because it makes more sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense
And it comes
to
back to
budget
that
better.
education, I suppose, that we were talking about
Mm,
earlier. It's like they're becoming more conscious, more,
yeah,
educated, more
yeah,
aware of what they're actually feeding themselves and their pets. So,
yeah.
Di, here at the Pet Biz Project, we have our motto is building meaningful relationships with pet parents. That's what we're all
Mhm.
about, is not just about marketing, but about how do we create that emotional connection and support and educate pet parents and build those long-term relationships with them. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means to you personally and to Frontier Pet?
Yes. So I told you before that our resident vet, technical vet, Dr. Kathy Cornack, comes in and
Mm.
educates us all of the time, and she does. And so what you end up with from Frontier Pet's point of view is a very, very educated customer service team.
Yeah,
So we have our customer service team have been with us from the get-go. So when you
fantastic.
build a relationship with a consumer, it's knowing what you're talking about
Mm.
and understanding what their issues are. And generally they're the same issues.
Yeah.
It's rare that you get someone ring up and say, well, my dog's got a green tongue. What do I do
Yeah.
about that? I have no
Yeah.
idea.
That's a little bit
But
too much.
they'll usually have the same kind of
Mm.
issues.
Yeah.
And so being educated and informed is such an important part of building that rapport and building that relationship with somebody. And so when a customer rings, they will get an educated response. And
Yeah.
if we don't know the answer, we'll say, just leave it with us, and we'll speak to somebody that does know. Or
Yeah.
we'll say, I don't know, go to your
Yeah.
vet. And I think it's building that trust.
Mm.
And it's
Yeah.
all about trust and none of that
Mm.
nonsense
Yeah.
bullshit that you
Yeah.
get from a lot of the larger companies that just don't know. They would,
Yeah.
they've got somebody in their ivory tower, and at the end of the day, they've got someone that's trying to talk to people.
Yeah.
Whereas what we do is we engaged our whole staff all
Mm.
the time.
Yeah.
So we've got the vet that will come out and she will educate customer service, but she'll also educate production.
Yeah.
So we've got production people, operations people, management, customer service, all in the same room with the vet who's
Fantastic.
saying, this is right, this is wrong,
Yeah.
etc. And so, and our customer service people will talk to our operational people and
Mm.
say, this is what the customers are saying, or this is what
Yeah.
their issues are. And so you've got engagement of all the team. There's no
Yeah.
separation.
And
And at the
you've
end
got
of the
more
day,
minds coming together and creating solutions, haven't you? Like the more people you have
absolutely.
educated and
And
involved, the yeah,
yeah,
the
when you're small, you can do that.
yeah.
But as we've grown, I've just made sure
Mm.
that they're always there, because
Yeah.
it's easy then to become in your little silos.
Yeah.
So you've got an operational person, we've got a head of operations, and he is hardwired to try and find the most efficient way possible
Yeah.
to produce our food.
Yeah.
And we've got a customer service person who's hardwired to do the right thing by the customer. So they've
Yeah.
got to come together.
Yeah.
There can't be any compromise between the
Mm.
two.
They have to work together. Yeah.
Yeah, that creates a trust between the
Mm.
two. And
Yeah.
so if you've got that communication within your own organisation, that
Mm.
filters out into your end consumer. So
Definitely,
everybody,
the consumer then must feel that level of knowledge and understanding and collaboration within the team just through the conversations they're having when they can contact you for support. So,
yeah,
yeah,
and they can contact us for support.
yeah, I
And
know
I
it's
think
not just a
that
little chat bot or something, is it?
we're not a chatbot. We're not you can contact us via email, but you can actually
Yeah,
pick up the phone and
yeah,
speak to us. It's
wow.
really
It
strange.
doesn't happen much these days,
It's
does it?
not fun.
That's
But that's
fantastic.
that's right.
Yeah,
Pick up the phone
fantastic.
and ask us. And
Great.
as I said, if we don't know, we'll find out. And
Yeah.
so people they might have strange things
Mm.
going on with their pets, like a green tongue or whatever. But basically, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
They've got digestion issue, or they've got weepy eyes, or it's the same. It's a
Mm.
common query.
Yeah.
Mm.
Fantastic. So tell me, Di, what's next for you and Frontier Pets then? What exciting things have you guys got coming up?
Well, uh, there's a couple of things going on. I mean, as I said, we've gone into our cat, so we've got this companion room.
Yeah.
The big thing for us is the global expansion, global domination.
Yes. Fantastic.
We've got a product that's easily transportable.
Mm.
Because our product is freeze dried, and I don't bore everybody with what that means exactly, but what it is it's raw food with all the water taken out.
Yeah.
So you don't have any spoilage. So it's kind of a natural preservative. So our product has a documented shelf life of 2 years, but you could keep it and you keep it for 20 years and it'll never go off because it's got no water in it.
Fantastic.
So it's very, very easily exported.
Yeah.
And so we started exporting to Korea about 3.5 years ago.
Gosh.
And now we're Singapore, Thailand, Taiwan, Japan, and we're about to get into China. So that's kind of our big
Yeah.
thing. And that for us gets back to our
Yeah.
supporting Australian farmers practicing sustainable agriculture,
Yeah.
because the Australian farmers can now give us a product that they wouldn't normally necessarily sell overseas.
No.
And it's contained within what we do, which we do sell overseas.
Yeah.
So we're giving back to them
That's
by
great.
creating a vehicle by which they can expand their operations.
Yeah.
And we're also helping to meet our mission of ending factory farming because
Yeah.
now we've got a global audience.
Yeah.
It comes with its challenges,
Yeah.
as you can imagine. But fortunately, we have a distribution company that we deal with that deals with the
Great.
intricacies of each
Yeah.
particular country. But well, I mean, there's still a long way to go with Australia. We've still got a massive Australian
Yeah.
audience. You know, we're increasing our treats all the time, finding
Yeah.
new products that we can put into our range.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's really that taking our Australian learnings and expanding that overseas. And
Yeah.
I'm delighted to say that we're actually the leading and the largest selling freeze-dried product in Korea now.
Wow.
You know, and we're this little
Gosh.
company, and we're in a
Yeah.
little regional area up until recently
Yeah.
that, you know, has knocked the American brands off the
Mm.
shelf
Yeah.
and said
And
this is an Australian brand, you know, that has this free range
And you're not
produce and
just taking your product global, you're taking that movement and that education and everything that
absolutely,
goes with it global as
absolutely,
well to more people and really
yeah.
changing the world. Because you guys give a huge amount back as well to sustainable farming, don't
Mm,
you? Like it
yeah,
financially.
yeah, financially.
Yeah.
And it's not because we're buying ethical produce. So we're up to nearly $10
Mm.
million dollars now
Wow,
that we have
gosh.
spent with ethical producers that
Yeah.
that wouldn't have made it otherwise. So
No.
it's not like we've said, okay, you're currently supplying produce there, bring it
Mm.
across here. We've created a whole new market for these
Yeah.
farmers.
Oh,
And
it's
that's what
amazing.
remember back at the beginning when I said we did that road trip and we saw the
Yeah.
farmers. And they were going, fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic, because now we have, you know, a market for what they call their trim. And I won't bother going through all that with you. But,
Yeah.
you know, so we're creating a commerce, you know, for
Mm.
them. And yeah, we've spent $10 million dollars on ethical
Gosh.
produce. It's
It's
fantastic.
huge.
It's really
Oh.
fantastic. Yeah.
I'm just in awe of everything you do, John. It's like
Oh,
it is
thank
amazing, and it's just fantastic to see, a business that's not just about their products. You are just about so much more and about changing the world and really going out there and having a
you.
huge impact and changing lives for the animals and also for people. So it's
Yeah.
fantastic, and we've really loved having you here on the show today. Before you go, if anyone wants to reach out to you, whether it's
Yep.
like your customer support or partnerships or anything like
Yes.
that, what's the best way to get in touch?
They can always contact me directly.
Yeah,
So it's Diana at frontierpets.com.au.
great.
Our telephone number is on our website. So
Yeah.
and there's contacts. So there's there's info at customer service, and there's a phone number
Oh,
where you can
wow.
contact us. But
Yeah.
if you're especially if you're another pet business,
Mm.
by all means contact me. I think that the beauty of uh, the smaller players in the pet food business is that we do talk to each other. And
Yeah.
I've just literally got back from the Pet Food Industry Association conference
Mm.
in Sydney. I mean, I like literally flew in last night,
Yeah.
and we talk to each other
Mm.
and we share information. The,
Yeah.
there are enough customers. There
Yes.
is
Yes.
enough for everyone.
Yeah.
Don't get caught up in, oh my God, there's a competition. Yeah, there's
Competition. Yeah.
competition.
Yeah.
You know,
There will
there
always
will
be other
always
brands
be
out there, but everybody's unique and different. And as you say, there is more than
yes,
enough animals and pet parents out there for us to all be
exactly.
very
But
successful.
like six
So,
and a half million dogs and 5 million cats. They're not all
yeah.
eating
Yeah.
optimum. Tell
Yeah.
me that they're not. I mean, at this conference, which was quite weird, I was sitting next to the CEO of Mars.
Yeah.
And it was a fantastic I had no idea who he was. I was sitting
Yeah.
next to him at
Having
for
a
dinner,
chat.
and he said, "Tell me what you do." And I said, "I'm Diane Scott, and I've got this
Yeah.
great product." And he said, "Look at you! Look at what
Yeah.
you've done! Isn't this?"
Yeah.
And he said, "I'm really inspired by what you're doing. That's absolutely fantastic. And
Yeah.
I said, your turn, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm the CEO of Mars Pet Care. Oh,
You're
and I
all,
went, well, that's a very grown-up job.
yeah.
And but he was just as interested in
Yeah.
what we were doing, and he said it's very inspirational. That's great.
Yeah.
So even though I might not agree with the products that they
Mm.
have,
Yeah.
we're all talking to each other, and we're all
Yeah.
respectful of the fact that we're in this industry together. So
Yeah,
by
and
all means,
everybody's got
reach out.
different perspective on things, haven't they? And you just have
Yeah,
to respect that
yeah.
and just focus on your mission and what you're here to do. Well,
Yeah,
thanks
and
so.
people helped me.
Yeah,
People helped me
exactly.
along the road, and I
Yeah.
speak to people that make treats that are in direct competition with us.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
It's
I think
just the
it's a
way that it is.
fantastic attitude to have that sort of
Mm.
mindset of collaboration rather than
Yeah,
competition. So, and it's what gets businesses the growth that they are looking for, when you go out there and you're willing to connect with others and collaborate,
yeah,
it really does help you have further reach with your business, especially in those early days when you have a tight budget. Partnership and collaboration can be the best way to grow. So,
absolutely. Where something's going to lead,
yeah,
you just
don't
never
know.
know.
No. Fantastic, Di. It has been such a pleasure chatting to you today. I could sit here all day and chat, to be honest. But I really appreciate you sharing all this
You're
information
welcome.
and just your experience with our audience. I think they're going to, find this. I know they're going to find this episode just so valuable. So
Right.
thank you. I really do appreciate all your time. And we'll pop all your details, contact details in the show notes as
Yep.
well of the episode. So thank you so much, Di.
You're
Have a
welcome.
great day.
Thank you.